Online DB practice. Cool. So what we want to do is, and we're going to actually be learning about a bit about the theory of databases today. In general, what is a database? Actually, talk to your neighbor. What is a database? Talk about an example of something that you have used that uses one.
Yes. Base with database, base that stores values. Imagine how it's a browser, but this actually is more democratic. No, that's not short span. I'm talking about in real.
Cool the hands. Who wants to give me a little overview? What do they know about databases? Actually, I'm just going to pick somebody. Ethan, what did you guys talk about?
Well, it's like a kind of data that collects, like, it's, we didn't really know.
Cool. Great. Good answer. Yeah, Rian.
A base where, like, data is kept?
A base where data is kept. Totally. Right? Sure. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Definitely right. Yeah, we keep data in there. Right? Cool. Let's say we are talking about Facebook in particular. All right? How does, let's talk about maybe like 2 or 3 things that Facebook stores in their database.
It stores the lives and surveillance of people so that Mark Zuckerberg and his lizard army can take over.
So that Mark Zuckerberg and his lizard army can take over the world. Sure. All right. So it stores all of your information. Cool. Man, this marker not so good.
Don't trust him.
Facebook database. Right?
Stores profile pictures,
So we got pictures,
names,
names, right? Now you'll note that there's actually a structure to this, right? So each person, there's actually almost like they have multiple databases, right? So they have a picture database, right? They have a person database, right? So let's talk about maybe just the person database. So each person, what are some things that each person has stored about them? Cool. Folks that are looking down, are you guys working on old stuff? We're going to be talking for 15 minutes here. I need eyes up here. Take your laptops and close them up. Name, contact, right? Friend list. Cool. This friend list, what is that made up of? Other of these, right? So you'll note that person stores a list of persons, right? That's kind of an interesting idea where it actually links back to itself. So you can actually start on one person and continually click through the friend list and get to different people, right? So if I start at Chris, right? I don't know if you're Facebook friends with anyone in this room. I'm just going to make up that you are, right? You're Facebook friends with Yirin, right? We can click on Yirin's. We can go through Yirin's and go to his grandmother's page, right? You can see like all the random stuff that his grandmother's up to, right? Knitting and cooking and whatever, right? Cool. Additionally, each person, right? So they also have a list of pictures associated with them. Right? If you go to your Facebook page, if I go to my Facebook page right now, right, and I click on my profile here, right, you can see I have one of my pictures has been dubbed my profile picture, right? It's me eating some Kylon.
What's that?
Kylon, it's like broccoli. They have it in the cafeteria every day, right? Right, you can see there is some specific, like there is a picture, right? One of my pictures has that, right? There's a whole bunch of pictures in here. If you go through them, right, you can see there's a bunch of pictures, right? So each one of these things, you'll note that this guy actually kind of links to this database, right? For each picture, what does each picture store?
pictures.
Definitely pixels, right? Pixels, right? AKA a picture, right? A picture. Right? What other info does a picture have about it? Let's say we click on this one right here. Right? What other info does this thing store about itself? Right? I went to a Frisbee tournament a couple weeks ago. Sorry?
Likes and comments.
Likes. Comments. Right? What about over here?
Tagged people.
Tagged people, right? People. right? And you can see that these two specific databases are very related, right? Pictures has a list of people associated with them, right? Each picture has 0 or more people associated with them, right? And then for each person, they have a list of pictures associated with them. So you can actually go back and forth, right? And there's a whole host of things that Facebook has the same idea with. This is just kind of a reasonable example of something that uses this, right? Now, here's a question. How do we actually access this database?
It's stored somewhere in the world, and then there's
Totally.
And
How do you access it?
there's a machine which connects to both of them, and you have to go through that machine into the internet.
Cloud computing? Sure. The internet, right? You literally open up your computer, right? Here's your laptop, right? It's got a little hinge. It's a pretty good laptop, right? You log in, right? And that basically sends a request to Facebook, right? You give it your login information, and what it does is it gives you back a whole bunch of information, right? So when I just logged in right now, right, it gave me my profile picture, right? It gave me all my stuff that's going on with me, right? And so on and so on. So you can see this idea of you send a request and it gives you stuff back. Now, you'll note that every single time I click on a picture, right? I don't know if you knew this, I'm a big Frisbee player, right? When I click on a picture, it does not immediately load, right? Why not?
It's still
Because
getting
it's already
Because
loaded.
Facebook be sending you that info.
Facebook be sending me that info. Absolutely.
You should have added
Right?
that.
It actually takes some time, right? It's not literally stored on my computer. It's stored in a server somewhere in Nevada, right? So when I log in, it has to literally like travel across this giant line halfway across the world, right? Grab the stuff on that server, send it all the way back. So when I if I click on one of my friends' pages, or if I click friends over here, right, you can see it actually takes a little bit of time to fire up this list, right? And that's because every time I do something, it actually is giving me data back, right? So
Is that your system?
you'll note that there's some lag time in here. Now, this thing is actually a pretty big concept, and we're going to be talking about this today. But basically, we're going to be talking about requests, right? Requests, right? And response. So, for example, and this kind of also involves a concept called multi-threading or multi-processing, right? Where we have multiple things going on at once. So if your computer is open, most likely you have Gmail open, you also have App Inventor open, you also have whatever, I don't know what else you guys have open, right? Safari and whatever, right? So if you have one program, it's doing one thing, and another program can do something else. Now with the same idea here, when I do something on Facebook, my computer can still be doing other stuff, right? So if I ask Gray, go fill up my water bottle right now, right? What's going to happen? He'll go and he'll do his own thing, and I can keep teaching, and I can keep like yelling at you guys to do your work or whatever, right? And when he comes back, he'll hand me this thing, and then I can actually drink some water, right? So this is kind of this idea of requests. So I will make a request to Facebook, or in this case, we're going to be using a thing called TinyDB, right? So I'm going to make a request to my database, and I'm going to wait, and it takes a little while because it's stored somewhere else, and when it's done, it's going to come back and say, hey, Mr. Redwick, I got some stuff for you. Here, deal with this as you will. Right? And so that's kind of the couple concepts that we're going to be dealing with today. And that pretty much is enough to use what we want to do. Right? Are there any questions about any of that stuff?
Go find out.
So, but how will you show us the code, like the basic tutorial I've done this?
Mm-hmm.
So it should
I'm going to do that right now.
So it should be like a quiz.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to store data and get data back. And then I'm going to have you figure out some of the other details. Cool?
Yeah,
So-
you mean Kurkure? You mean Kurkure?
What?
Oh.
Cool. So on our app,
Kurkure.
somebody find where's the database stuff live?
How many is this?
I agree on the database. What elements do I need to use for that? Experimental. Let's see. We got CloudDB and FireDB. Oh, interesting. All right, cool. Let's click on this on Firebase DB. I actually know what this is, and this is not it.
What is it?
A non-visible component that allows you to store data on a web database powered by Firebase. Cool. Does anyone know what Firebase is?
Is that Firefox?
It is not Firefox. It is Firebase. It's something. It used to be its own independent, amazing product where it's a really fast database. We're actually been using a database kind of like this. It got bought by Google maybe like 6 years ago, or no, not Google, Amazon. And now it's basically an Amazon hosted database. We're not going to be doing that. That's a bit harder to use. Yep. Storage. Cool. We got 4 things in here. We got file. Right, we don't really want to be storing files, right? We want to be using a database. So there's kind of one of these two, TinyDB and TinyWebDB. So if we look at TinyDB, it is a non-visible component that stores data for an app. Apps created with the app inventor are initialized each time they run. If an app sets the values of a variable and the user then quits the app, the value of that variable, will not be remembered the next time the app is run. Does that sound good or bad?
I don't know.
Good.
Do we want the data to be reset every time we run the app, or do we want it to stick around?
Stick around.
We want it to stick around. Cool, let's try this one. TinyWebDB. Non-visible components that communicates with a web service to store and retrieve information. That's not a great overview, but if we click this little more information thing, right, we can see there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. There's some methods, right, and I'm just going to tell you right now this is the one we want to use, right, this TinyWebDB. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag that onto here. And maybe what we'll be doing is we'll be making an app that will, maybe we'll just make like a chat app, okay? So, and what I mean by that, almost like forums, right? So you can, basically we'll have a little input and we'll just display all of the entries that anybody uses. Right, cool? So, that's our goal for our app. All right, let's see. So we need a text box. All right, we need a submit button. And we need maybe a list view. Sure, list view. And so we'll basically have a whole bunch of things. Actually, wait, do we want to do this? You know, I'm gonna make a simpler app. I take it back. We're gonna do, shoot, how do you delete elements? Oh, delete.
Delete everything.
Sorry, I lied. What we're gonna do, we're just gonna make a let's see, maybe like a little reminder app, so we can just have one piece of information and we can remind ourselves of it later. All right, so maybe at the top we'll call it reminder. Actually, I'll leave that the way it is. So this text box, this will be thing to remember. Right? Cool. My button, I'm going to say remember or save memory. Cool. And we need a text box to have a display. So
Oh my God.
a label to display our memory. So
I think I got it. Yeah.
I'm going to call this memory output. All right. So I have 3 elements up here. Can you see this, or is this too small? So I have 3 elements up here. Element number 1 is a text box, right? So we can basically save a memory. We have a button, and maybe I'll change the text on here to have it be save memory. Save my memory.
Which one?
And then finally I have a label that I'm going to be outputting stuff in. All right, so there's my whole app. If you want to give it a nice pretty background color, right, what color is associated with memories for you?
Blue.
Blue. Great. I heard blue
That's
first.
very specific.
I'm going to pick cyan so we can actually see our text. It's under your screen, background color.
No, wait, what?
So if you-
How do you tell the back?
There it is. Oh no. Yes, there it is. Thank you.
Cool. So what I want us to do is every time we click save my memory, right, I want to update 2 different spots. Right? Spot number 1 is the obvious one, which is this little output label right here. All right, so I wanted to just update the thing that it says over here, right? And then additionally, what I want to do is I want to send my information to my server, right? And then each time I launch my app, I want to grab the element from my server and display that. So that's kind of my general workflow, right? Maybe I'll just write these over here. Maybe I'll just make little notes in a Google Doc. That might be better. So let's see. I'll just make a empty Google Doc. That's true teamwork right there, guys. Very adult of you. All right, so actions. Whoops. So actions. When we click the button, update database, update label. And then when we launch the app, load from database. Great. So those are basically all of our actions, right? So you can think like the brown colored things, right? The action handlers. So when we click, do that. And additionally, when we launch the app, does anyone know what action we're going to be using for when we launch the app?
Mentor.
So what action am I going to be using on my blocks?
Wait, I want to see that Google Doc.
What's that? When screen initialize.
Where that at?
Right, it lives in screen. So this is one of them. And our other one's when we click the button. Right, and you'll note that I kind of mentioned this a couple times, but I'm just going to kind of recap this now. Right, the colors are this programming language is very color coded. Right, so the brown colored ones, right, these are called action listeners, and these are action handlers. So when an action happens, what do I want to do? So for example, right now, when they click this button, whatever lives in here is going to happen. What about when they just touch the screen? What's going to happen?
Nothing yet.
Nothing, because I haven't put an action listener in there. Right? If I wanted one, I could say when screen.touch, which it looks like there isn't one, but there is for certain things, like for Canvas there was one, right? When you touch the canvas, do XYZ, right? Now I don't need to do that in this app, but yeah. So when my screen initializes, right, I want to load from my database. I'm going to save that for later. All right, I'm going to do the easy one first. So you should be able to do this, right? This first one here. Maybe take a stab yourself. It's update the label. This is the easiest one. Everyone should be able to do this one. So take a stab at that. Update the label when you click the button.
Wait, so update the label to what the text box says?
You got it.
The quiz book. I'm interested in joining it. It's 2 weeks, right?
What?
Quiz book. When does it go?
You won't be able to do the tournament stuff. It's every Wednesday from 4:30 to 6. So what is our current objective?
Our current objective is to make that little app that I was talking about. So we want to be basically saving stuff into our server, into our database.
But that is our tiny TV, right? That is our.
Yep, you got it. Sorry? I called my label. I don't have a label one anymore. I renamed it. It's called memory output for me. Right? Thing to remember is my text box. Memory output is where I'm going to be displaying it. But you can call it label 1 if you want to. It's just that's a confusing name for me. That doesn't tell me what it's going to do. In fact, you shouldn't call it label 1. You should rename it.
Show me your entire code.
Cool, so you can see I've successfully gotten it. When I type in something and I click Save My Memory, right, it just displays in this nice little text box down here. Now, as I'm running this, I'm realizing this guy is pretty small, so I'm going to make my font a bit bigger.
Wait,
Maybe
so I have it that it clears the text box once you hit it. Is that okay? Like,
you can clear it. You just want to update it to whatever's in here.
yeah. I'm gonna clear the label. I set the label. I update the label, but I clear the text box.
Sure, that's fine.
Cool.
Totally. Yeah, if you want to do that, that might be a nice little feature. All right, so hi there, right? I hit save, and boom, boom, it shows up, right? If I add a little exclamation point each time I save, right, that one's done. And this thing here, we've done this a few times, right? This shouldn't be new. Cool. So what we want to do here is we want to also save into our database. So let's click on our tiny web DB1. Now, just to recap. Does anyone need more time for the first part? Just
Yes,
to,
I need to.
I don't know if you're on.
cool. I'm going to give you another 1 minute. What I would like you to do is explore through TinyWebDB, see what's in here, right? What do our brown tags mean? Right, those are event handlers. What are our purple things? What are our green things? Right, and really, what are we trying to do? We're trying to save some information in our database.
There you go. That's it. Basically, whatever you put in your text box will now be part of the label, and it'll empty your text box.
Okay.
That last part wasn't necessary, but I just left it. Here, check it out. This is what it does. I'll hit boy, when you press the boy, then I hit save item.
Boy.
And you probably get lost in this.
Wait, may I borrow this? Or did I just-
Sure.
Oh, wait, yeah. I already saved that.
Cool. I'm going to start going through the idea, my little thought process, and how I would figure out how to store. I already know the answer, but this is at least a nice little mental exercise for you guys. So we can see, right? Remember these brown guys, right? Those are event handlers or action handlers, right? So I don't really. What I want to be doing is I want to take an action, right? I don't want to be listening for an action. So I'm going to be looking for this purple range here. You can see we got purple call get value for tag. That's going to get me a value. Or we have store value, right? And that's going to actually send stuff to my database. So this is the one I want to do, right? And you can see if we read this, right? Asks the web service to store the given value under the given tag, right? Now this specific concept, right? The way this works is each value has a key associated with it or a tag associated with it, right? So potentially we can call our tag whatever we want. I'm going to call it memory. Right, this is my tag, right? And then it is going to get a value of whatever I'm putting in there, right? Like hi, right? And then if I hit submit, right, that's what it'll get set to. Right? If I overwrite it with buy groceries, right, then it'll get updated to that, right? So this is the thing that I want to be calling here. All right, so you can see the tag is the one that is always going to be the same every time, right? And that's asking for a text. Right, memory. Right, and the value to store is going to be the thing that we have typed in here, right? So this guy. Cool, and again, right, you can see this not so complicated, this idea of actually just sending data here. Are any questions on that?
So
Cool. If I wanted to save a second piece of data, like the number of times somebody saved memories, how would I do that in my database? Let's say I wanted to store two things. Talk to your neighbor. How would we store two things? How would that look like in our database?
Let me think about this.
How do you store two things in the database? So, if I stick code in now, you can only store in one.
Right now, we're only storing one piece of data. So how would we store multiple? That's the question.
I think it would all be under the same tag, though, right?
So let's talk about it. How do we store two pieces of data? So how would we store, in addition to our memory that we have, right, the number of times that we've remembered something, or the number of times that we've saved something? Right? How would our data? So right now our database looks kind of like this, right? We have a memory as our key, right, or as our tag, and it has a value of whatever we've most recently stored. Right? I would say there are two answers to this question, or two reasonable answers. How would we store more stuff?
How would we store more stuff?
Yep.
Is this like, I'm not sure if this is correct, but it's like similar to the list figure where on the tag you could like have multiple, I forgot, it was like,
Multiple, like a list?
yeah, is that possible?
I don't think we can use a list here. This is only a string, right? But you're close. It does have to do with this tag stuff.
Maybe multiple tags?
Yeah, we can pick multiple tags, right? So right now we're using the tag memory. Right. If we could, we don't need to join it, actually. Right, we can write this same bit of code here, right? And we can say number of stores, or number of memories, right? And set it to a value, right? So maybe it's each time we click it, we increase it. Right, so maybe we could have a variable. I'm not going to do all that logic, but you could do that, right? So we could store this as whatever, 3. Right now, what I'm saying is the number of memories is always 3, which obviously is incorrect. But if we were to draw this over here, right, you can see we'd have memory has a value of, right, buy groceries. And additionally, we'd have
So we want it to be able to store an infinite
number of memories is 3. You could do that if you wanted to. I'm just kind of talking about this idea of how would we store different things, right? So going back to this idea of Facebook, for example, right? We could have one database that would be pictures, right? And it would have a whole list of pictures. And then additionally, we could have a second tag that could be person or a bunch of people. And each person tag would have associated information. So, and this idea here, this is going to lead into, eventually you're going to have one tag for questions and one tag for answers in your little question maker app. Does that kind of make sense? And again, we'll get there. Cool, I'm going to delete this thing because we don't actually need it for this specific app, but you could use it if you wanted to. Right, so the last thing we want to do is we want to actually fetch information each time we load something. Right? And again, it lives in here. Right, so what I want to do is I want to basically fetch data. Which tag is that going to be?
Get value.
Get value. Sweet, let's hover over that. So get value asks the web service to get the value stored under the given tag. It is up to the web service what to return if there is no value stored under the tag. This component just accepts whatever is returned. Right, now you can see that when we stick this in here, right, which so far we're correct, right, what tag do we want to access? Memory, right, same as before. Right, cool. Now, right now, our code, what are we doing with the value that they give us back? We want to display it. What are we doing right now, though?
Wait, but screen run initialize will occur first, and it'll get a value that doesn't exist because you haven't stored a value.
Ah, good points. That's true. I agree, and we're going to handle that. But let's ignore that fact for now. You're totally right. Right, before we ever store anything, it's going to be empty. Right. So right now, we call get value on memory. Right. What are we doing with the value that they're giving us back? What are we currently doing? What is my code doing with it?
Well, it stores the value, then the screen initializes, it gets that value back.
Right. We're getting that back. Right.
Nothing else is happening.
Nothing else is happening. Right. We're not doing anything with that value. So typically, and actually when I coded this the first time, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. I was expecting something with one of these little things sticking out on this side over here, right? Because that would mean that it would actually give me the value, right? And this actually comes back to this concept of requesting data and getting a response back. So what I'm doing right here is I am requesting data from my server, right? I'm saying, hey server, when you're ready, give me that memory stuff. And then we actually have a second action. If we click in TinyWeb over here, right, there's this guy right here, got value. This is the response, right? So if you hover over that, you can see indicates that a get value server request has succeeded. So we actually need to use this as well. All right, and you can see tag from WebDB. What is that going to be equal to? What's the tag going to be every single time for this app? Memory, right? I don't care about that. I don't actually want that value. I want this one here. I want the value. All right, so what I want to do is I want to update that label to be this guy right here. So it would be memory output dot set, or set memory output dot text to this thing right here. Right, and so there's basically my whole program. Let's see.
I got tag from WebDB. Is that the same as value? No.
So the tag is going to be memory, right? We want this value over here. We want the actual memory that we've stored. All right, so when we run this program, right, I'm actually, let's see. I'm going to change something over here so it reloads my page. I'll change this text size to 21. Alright, so you can see anime SUCC, right? That's weird. I wonder what that is. Cool. If let's say,
That's not mine.
I am cool. Right? Save my memory. I am cool. Right?
I didn't write that.
No, nobody did. That's the default value it looks like. Right? And you can see,
What?
right, if I close my app and it opened again, right, if I change this to 2022 again, right, you can see my app just loaded. And actually there's no value at the beginning, right, when I launch it, right? And if I actually give my thing a default value, right, like nothing saved, right? So it started off as nothing saved. Was that somebody else that put that in there? No, right?
No.
You guys don't have access to my database. I actually,
Does it share it across?
So- no.
Use the memory tag, then wouldn't we all have access?
yeah, but each one of us has our own database,
Oh. Okay.
right? Each person's version of App Inventor has their own database, so you're not messing around with mine.
So where's it getting all? Where did they get all that stuff?
Some enemies.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I found it.
Enemies. Did you write that?
It's definitely on.
Right?
You're changing the subject. You did it.
No, I didn't start it. But anyway.
Cool. Big takeaways. Right? I would say there's 3 big takeaways from this little demo today. Takeaway number 1. When you want to save data, right, you need to give it a tag and a value. Right? That's that relationship. Takeaway number 2. When you want to get data back, right, you need to send a request. It's really kind of 2 and 3 are combined. Send a request and actually use the got value event, right? So there's really 2 actions to get data back from your server. You send a request, and then you listen for them to give you a request back. Oh, and the third takeaway is if you want to store multiple things, right, you need a unique tag for each one, right? So each one of those is going to be separate. Any questions about anything we've done today?
So when screen 1 initializes, it goes to TinyWebDB and says, "Hey, give me the memory."
Correct.
And then when it says to save memory.
So when it actually gives me back that thing, right, it's going to call this got value tag.
Wait, when I click it, I don't get it. Wait, just a second.
Now, a challenge for you guys, actually. What I would like you to do, just change your code a little bit, add another button, okay? Call it fetch saved data, and have it, every time you click it, you'll pull from the server. So, challenge.
It wasn't.
I realize this is not a super hard challenge.
Hold on, right now.
Cool. So take 4 or 5 minutes. Give that a shot. Alright, so make another button. Have it be when you click it, it will automatically load from your database.
Mattress.